Hi there, and welcome to Creative Kids Club Week 4. This week we are going to be doing a string art project. String art is a type of art that dates back over 100 years, and it looks like my little dolphin friend here, so you've probably seen it around before. So we don't have to do a whole lot of unpacking today because there are just 3 items in the kit. You have the board with the nails, a card with some yarn around it, and some embroidery floss. And the reason there's only 3 pieces is because I had to do a little bit of the work ahead of time before I sent it out, because I couldn't send a hammer to everyone who was getting the kit to put their own nails in. So I've done that for you. So that means I am going to show you a few things before we get to the stuff that's hands-on. I'm gonna show you a bit about how this template goes together before we do any of the yarn work. So I'm going to move this aside. And I'm going to bring out this piece. So this is a completed dolphin piece. You can see around here. So what I started with, a slightly smaller version of this, just a plain silhouette of a dolphin. And put this on a piece of wood and spaced out nails along the outside of it. Now what you want to do if you're doing this on your own is you want to space them out far enough that you can access all of them to wrap your thread around, but close enough that when you're done, you can see the shape that you're trying to make. Now this can be done. There are templates that you can get that will show you exactly where to put your nails, or you can take any picture that you want to take. I grabbed a dolphin because dolphins are my mom's favorite, so I wanted to give mine to her. And also it had a few edges here that I thought would be interesting. So we can take a look at the one that's made here. And so you can see, move this over a little bit, where I put points at the end of these so you could really see where the edges were. And when you're stringing the thread, you want to make sure it's only on the interior. And for instance, I didn't go from this tip to this tip. That is completely open. Or I didn't go from this tip to this tip. I made sure I go in around the outline. On some pieces, you'll want to go around an outline first. On others, you can just start stringing. So I will show you how to do that in a moment. Another thing to note about just setting up to do some string art is if you don't have a board and nails, or you don't want to work with a board and nails, you can do it with just pins and put them in a pin board. Whether it's like a regular, bulletin board type of pin board, or just something that's soft enough that you can stick pins into. It'll work the same way. They might not be they might wiggle around a little bit more, but it will still work perfectly well if you want to try that out. So now on to the actual stringing part. And this, I've just put together a plain circle. Nothing special about this. It just was a good shape to use to show some of the ways that we can string things. So the first thing we do on this is you tie a knot. I like to tie my knot before I put it over a nail. Just tie a loose knot in your string. Like that. And then put it over wherever you want to start. And there will be a tail, and you can tie that off or just cut it off later. So now I'm using embroidery thread for this one. Just have a big length of embroidery thread. Now what I could do with this is I could just start wrapping it around randomly, and it would just fill it on the inside, if that's what I wanted to do. And that's a perfectly valid way to do this, especially if you have a simple shape like a circle. But you want to make sure, no matter what you're doing, that you're holding it tight. Because as soon as it gets loose and you're trying to wrap, it's just gonna You know, you can't really work with it. So you have to make sure whatever you're doing that you are pulling it tight as you go. So one thing that you will often want to do if you're using a more complex shape, like the dolphin, or like there are several other incredibly complex shapes that you can do with this. I'll show you a few pictures of those. But you can start doing an outline. You take your thread and you go to each nail and just wrap it around. And you can do this all the way around the outside. And you will all probably have smaller fingers than me and will probably find this easier to do. So there is just if I wanted to do an outline. I've gone all the way around the outside, and then I can start filling it in. And again, I can start just kind of picking whichever one I want and just going across and just trying to make sure I get at least one time on each one of them. Or I could try to do a pattern. This especially works when you have a regular shape like a circle. Is I can say, okay, I want to wrap around every third nail. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and so on. All the way around. And at this point, you will start to see that there is a pattern forming here. I did a little research on string art because I had done it before, starting when I was a kid, but I didn't know where it came from. And apparently it originally started as a counting tool. And you can really start to see that when you make these patterns because you have to count out. Skip 2, go around 1. And now you can see, because my lines here are parallel, that I've gotten back to where I started. But I have, you know, I have a bunch of thread left. So maybe I want to do every fifth one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the more you skip, of course, the more of the interior you're gonna cover. Now in your package, you will have the yarn and you will have the embroidery thread. You can use both or you can use either. Does not really matter. It's whatever you want to use. Maybe you want for one of the colors, maybe you prefer the feel of one of them. Or maybe you just want to do part with one, part with the other. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so a whole new pattern is forming around the middle now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can see. Now, if I decide that I don't really like the look of this, I'd rather be random. As long as you haven't tied it off, it will all come off again. So what this basically is doing is it's using your thread to color the inside of the piece and do it in a really sort of interesting way. And so we're back to, you know, my original outline. Maybe I want to take that off too, and I can go right back to having nothing on there at all. And that is really the basics of how you thread this. Now you may have seen me doing a couple of different things. Sometimes I will just kind of catch it and move on. And sometimes I will loop it around and move on. You can do either one of these. Sometimes if you're just trying to catch it and move on, it slips off more. And that's when you'll want to maybe just put a loop around. Or maybe you just like to loop it around. You can experiment with it and see which one you like better, whether you like how it feels more or whether you like how it looks more. And that's one of the beautiful things about doing this is you can go right back to the start again. There's nothing left behind. There's no erasing. You take it all off and you're left exactly where you started with just some nails and a board and some thread, and you can try it all over again. And that's that. So now we can move on to our actual project. So we're doing a heart today, and I am just going to grab, I was working with the embroidery thread before. I'm going to use the wool on this one, just so you can sort of see a bit of the difference. It's just wrapped around a card. And this will start the same way. You find a point to start at, and It's usually easiest if you find an actual point. So one of the edges here. Although, you know, if you try something else and you like it better, that is your way of doing it. So I've made my knot here. And if you feel like the knot is not really tight, you can wrap it around and knot it again if you want, but I feel like this is pretty good. And I think that I'm going to try this, first of all, without an outline. So I'm just going to kind of go here. And there, see, kind of got to hold it tight. If it gets caught, you just tighten it up again. Now I'm going to show you one of the things you have to watch out for when you have a shape now. It's not just a circle. We have a shape with ins and outs. So I can't go from this nail to this nail because then I will lose my pattern. I have to make sure that all of the thread is staying on the inside of our pattern here. So I can't go across here. I have to go, maybe I'll go over here instead. And as you do more and more of them, you see the shape appearing. So you do want to make sure that you hit each nail at least once. Now maybe you will find that you have enough yarn that you are going to hit each nail 5 times. Maybe you want to try to do a pattern on it. Is that one? Now that one kind of went across here, so I don't think I want to do that. Let's go across to here instead and then back up. Okay, you see the difference? That now I'm not crossing this outside part. And the more of the yarn that I put on, the more that you can see the heart shape. Now I didn't put an outline on this, but if I change my mind, I can actually do it now. If I decide, you know, I'd really like to see the outside of the heart, I can put it on later. I don't have to put it on first, although it's usually better if you put it on first, but you know, you might find differently. This is one of those arts where people are always kind of experimenting. Seeing, you know, you could use just plain ordinary sewing thread. You'd have to use a lot of it. It would make a very, very delicate design. Or you could use ribbon, you could use hemp cord. You could try to use rope if you want. You probably need a very big piece of art to do that. So now I've outlined all the way around and you can see that. If I had decided to put nails around the outside here, I could have just made the heart the empty space and put all the thread on the outside. And that might have looked really interesting as well. So when you're finished, the easiest way to tie it off is just go back to where you have your original thread. And you'll need your scissors from the previous week to cut this off. I'm just going to cut some extra off here. There, and you just tie these ends together. There. Now, if I didn't go back around to my original tail, if I say I wanted to end back where I actually ended it, right here, I could just tie this there. I can just do a knot around it, tie this off, and then I could just trim both of the ends here. And there you have your finished piece. Now you'll probably want to use all of this and fill it all in, although maybe you want to do just a very sparse one. It's sort of up to you what you want it to look like. And when they are finished, they also make a really lovely wall hanging. You can put some hooks on the back and hang them up as a decoration. Or maybe you have another purpose you want to use it for. It is entirely up to you. I hope you have enjoyed doing string art with me today, and I will see you again next week.